When Dakota Johnson finally admitted that she once confronted Jamie Dornan about a hidden moment fans completely missed, the revelation sent shockwaves through interviews, fandoms, and the entire 50 Shades legacy. She didn't say it dramatically. She didn't tease it for effect. She simply said it with a quiet seriousness that made everyone lean closer. There's something Jamie never addressed, and I had to confront him about it. In that instant, the room fell silent because everyone sensed this was not about acting, it was personal. Dakota explained that the moment happened years earlier during the filming of a scene that seemed ordinary to everyone else on set. It wasn't emotional, romantic, or physically intense. It was just a simple exchange between characters. But something in Jamie's expression had shifted. Something unscripted, something raw, and Dakota felt it immediately. "He looked at me in a way Christian Grey never would," she said, hinting that the emotion came from Jamie himself, not the character he was playing. For years, Dakota kept that moment to herself, unsure whether she had imagined it or whether Jamie had meant something he was never willing to say. She replayed it in her mind more times than she cared to admit. That one look, that tiny moment, unsettled her in a way she couldn't explain. It felt like a truth slipping out before either of them could hide it. And the fact that Jamie never brought it up only made Dakota more convinced it wasn't accidental. She recalled feeling confused and almost shaken right after the scene. While the crew moved equipment and the director prepared for the next shot, Dakota stood there trying to process what had just happened. She remembered turning away quickly, hoping the cameras hadn't captured the slight tremble in her breath. "I wasn't supposed to feel anything," she admitted. "But I did, and that scared me." It was the first time she realized their connection might not be fully under their control. During that period, Dakota and Jamie were both trying to balance professional responsibilities with the intense emotional demands of their roles. Their chemistry was already magnified by long hours, vulnerable scenes, and the trust that naturally forms between actors who must rely on each other. But this moment was different. It crossed into something genuine, something that didn't belong to Anna or Christian. "I knew him too well not to notice," Dakota explained, "and he knew I noticed." The more she thought about it, the more unsettled she became. She wondered why Jamie hadn't said anything, why he hadn't acknowledged the shift, why he had avoided her eyes for the rest of the day. At wrap, everyone joked and chatted as usual, but Dakota felt distant, distracted, unable to shake the weight of that one look. "It was like a door opened for 1 second, she said, "and he slammed it shut before I could see inside. But even a second was enough." Years passed, and Dakota still remembered it clearly. She noticed how that moment changed the energy between them, subtle at first, but undeniable. They were more careful with each other afterward, more self-aware, almost afraid of repeating something they couldn't explain. At the same time, the trust between them deepened, as if both silently acknowledged they were carrying the same unspoken truth. "We never talked about it," Dakota said, "but we both felt it." Eventually, the weight of that silence became too heavy. During a quiet moment off-set, one of those rare times when they weren't surrounded by cameras or crew, Dakota finally asked him directly. She didn't plan the confrontation. The question simply escaped her lips. "Why did you look at me like that day?" She said. Jamie froze, stunned not by the question itself but by the fact that she still remembered. His reaction only confirmed everything Dakota had suspected. Jamie hesitated, searching for words he clearly wasn't prepared to say. He gave a vague explanation, something about being in the moment and feeling overwhelmed by the scene. But Dakota knew him, knew his voice, his eyes, his tells, and recognized he was hiding something. He wasn't lying, she said. He was avoiding. And avoidance, to Dakota, was an answer in itself. The conversation ended, but the truth of that hidden moment never disappeared. Dakota said confronting Jamie didn't resolve anything. It simply made the unspoken even louder. What happened in that split second years ago had changed something fundamental between them. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew it mattered. And with that, the world realized this wasn't just another behind-the-scenes story. It was the moment that redefined everything between Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson. A moment only the two of them truly felt, and only one of them was brave enough to finally speak about. When Dakota finally confronted Jamie about the hidden moment, she expected clarity, maybe even closure. Instead, his reaction only deepened the mystery. Jamie looked stunned, not guilty, not embarrassed, just genuinely unprepared. It was as if she had reached into a memory he had tried hard not to revisit. "I didn't think you noticed," he finally whispered, and those 6 words changed everything for Dakota. She explained that the tone of his voice told her more than the words did. It wasn't casual. It wasn't dismissive. It carried the weight of someone who had felt something he wasn't supposed to feel, at a time he wasn't supposed to feel it. Jamie's eyes shifted away as if he feared she would read the truth in them again. Dakota felt a strange mixture of relief and confusion. Relief that she hadn't imagined the moment, and confusion about what it meant for both of them. Jamie eventually admitted that the look he gave her all those years ago wasn't part of the scene. He said he didn't even realize it had slipped out until the director yelled cut. The moment wasn't rehearsed, wasn't planned, and wasn't something he could blame on character immersion. He described it as an instinctive reaction, something that came from Jamie, not Christian. "I didn't know how to handle it," he confessed quietly. "So I didn't handle it at all." Hearing this, Dakota felt her chest tighten with both validation and shock. For years, she had replayed the moment wondering if she had imagined the intensity. Now she knew she hadn't. The truth had been hiding right there in front of them, tucked away behind Jamie's silence. But knowing it didn't simplify anything, it only raised more questions. Why had he buried it? Why had he pretended it never happened? And what would it have meant if he hadn't looked away? Jamie explained that he chose to ignore the moment because acknowledging it would have complicated everything: their work, their friendship, their emotional balance on set. They were already navigating enormous pressure, and he feared adding something so personal would break the chemistry rather than strengthen it. Dakota understood, but she also realized the cost of that choice. Hiding it didn't make it disappear, she said. It just made it heavier. The studio executive who witnessed their dynamic later said this confrontation changed the energy between Jamie and Dakota in ways no one expected. They weren't distant afterward, they were more intentional. Their conversations carried a new honesty. Their scenes felt sharper, more grounded, almost as if the truth finally allowed them to breathe. But there was also a softness, an unspoken awareness that they had crossed into something deeply human. It was like they finally acknowledged the ghost in the room, the executive recalled. Crew members noticed too. They saw how Jamie and Dakota lingered a second longer before scenes, how they exchanged quiet glances that held more meaning than dialogue ever could. The confrontation didn't create tension, it created understanding. Dakota said it felt like tying together 2 loose threads that had been drifting for years. Jamie didn't deny the moment anymore. He owned it, even if he couldn't articulate everything behind it. When asked what the hidden moment actually was, Dakota offered the simplest but most powerful explanation. He looked at me like he wasn't acting. She described it as a look filled with vulnerability, hesitation, and something that felt uncomfortably real. It wasn't romantic in a dramatic way. It wasn't explosive or inappropriate. It was tender, so tender it shook her. And that tenderness lingered long after the cameras stopped. The most surprising part came when Dakota admitted that her confrontation didn't just clarify the past, it changed the future. Their working relationship became more open, more collaborative. They felt safe addressing things they once avoided. "It made us better," she said, "not just as scene partners but as human beings." That hidden moment, once buried in silence, became the foundation for a deeper connection they hadn't dared to explore. Years later, Dakota reflected on the entire experience with a mixture of nostalgia and awe. She said fans saw passion, intensity, chemistry, but they never saw the moment that truly defined their bond. "They think they saw everything," she said softly, "but they missed the moment that meant the most." That moment wasn't captured on camera. It wasn't scripted. It lived only between them, raw, fleeting, unforgettable. And with her final words, Dakota confirmed what fans had suspected but never fully understood. That one look changed everything. Even if no one else ever saw it.